Now, the Isle of Man has avoided being placed on a blacklist of countries deemed not doing enough to fight tax evasion. There were concerns, of course, the island would be targeted, really, following the release last month of the Paradise Papers, which made public some of the intricate ways the world's rich evade tax offshore. However, the list of non-cooperative jurisdictions approved by European Union finance ministers does not include the Isle of Man. We are on a grey list, though, it should be said. Joining me in the studio is the Chief Minister, Howard Quayle. Good morning to you, Chief Minister.
Morning, James.
First of all, well, I was going to say, how do you feel? Relief, justification, or a bit of both? But judging by that snazzy tie you've got on, I would imagine you're cock a hoop with this news.
Well, I am very pleased that the decision has been made not to blacklist the Isle of Man. You know, the Isle of Man is a very well-run jurisdiction. We take our international responsibilities very seriously, and this good news follows on from more good news. That's the OECD recent Global Forum on Transparency and Exchange of Information that we've just been through our assessment again, our second assessment, and we're one of only 3 countries in the world to be fully compliant yet again. So I think it just shows you that the Isle of Man plays its part in international transparency.
This is essentially good news for the Isle of Man, of course it is. But the actual press release, as is the way press releases are done, there was a bit of spin because there was no mention of the fact on that we're effectively on a grey list. I think we're one of 6 nations which have been asked to address concerns relating to economic substance. Jersey, Guernsey are among the others as well, Bermuda. You met the EU Code of Conduct group. What levels of concerns have they raised then that we have to change to get our house fully in order?
Well, the concerns centred around substance, and I suppose for the coming months that will be the buzzword that we in government will have to discuss with the EU Code of Conduct group and ECOFIN on what is really meant by the word substance. But we have committed to working with them to alter rules and regulations where necessary to ensure that we comply with the interpretation on the word substance for businesses that operate on the Isle of Man. But I think whatever we agree, when I sent the letter committing the Isle of Man to making any changes, I think it's important that this, whatever is agreed, is a global solution, James, not just a few countries having to do it, because otherwise all you will do is displace the problem to other countries in the world.
When it says we're non-compliant in certain areas, what areas are those? For example, without going into detail, and I appreciate you're still assessing this, but what are we going to do to effectively change from grey to white?
Well, we're going to look at the detail in relation to legal substance requirements of entities doing business in or through the Isle of Man. And it's a highly complex area, the exact definition of what substance means, and that is something that we've said we need to work with the Code of Conduct group to clarify that going forward. But as I say, we've committed to making any necessary changes to ensure that we comply, and not being on the blacklist is incredibly important for ourselves and anyone else who had this hanging over. I think there was 92 jurisdictions who had been written to by the Code of Conduct group. But as I say, I'm delighted that we are not one of the 17 who have been blacklisted.
You recently met the heads of the overseas territories, the Chief Minister of Guernsey in London. Now, after the OECD rating, of course, this is obviously music to your ears. But how much influence, if any, do you think these visits that you and your colleagues have had with fellow ministers, with politicians, talking to those in the corridors of power, promoting the island as a responsible, transparent, cooperative jurisdiction, how much of an influence does that have potentially with lists like this?
It has a great impact, James. I mean, I was away in Westminster last week. I think I met 10 senior politicians separately. And when you point out to them that the Isle of Man was only the 2nd country in the world to sign up to base erosion profit shifting, and you then show that we do take our international responsibilities very seriously and that we're only one of 3 countries to retain our OECD fully compliant rating, they do sit up and pay attention. But it's not just me as a politician, James, working behind the scenes. It's the teams in Treasury, it's the teams in Cabinet that have been working behind the scenes to ensure that the Isle of Man it's not blacklisted, and they deserve to take an awful lot of credit for this.
Will this latest list at a stroke dispel any myths, or is it an ongoing battle? Obviously, this isn't a one-off process.
No, sadly, it won't dispel the myths and false information that are out there. That's something we're constantly working at. But I think for the next number of years, there will be various lists we will have to look into and ensure that we're not on them. And this is something that my administration has to look forward to for the rest of its term.
Just let me ask you, after all the media spotlight over the past month or so, how much does news like this, like the OECD rating as well, help ensure that island companies can continue to trade with EU countries without those extra barriers, without those extra hurdles put in front of them?
Well, it's incredibly important. If we had been blacklisted, then you might have had banks not happy to give loans to companies wanting to set up on the Isle of Man, etc. So it was an incredibly serious issue that we have come through, and as I say, I'm delighted that we haven't been blacklisted. But as I say, this will be going on for some time now, James, for the next few years. But we have agreed with ECOFIN that we will comply with their rules and regulations on substance, once we've discussed what substance means, by the end of 2018.